Hello everyone, welcome to the Hindu analysis for 13th February 2021. Let us begin with the first article. Not conceded any territory, says government. So, from yesterday's article, we know that Mr. Rajnath Singh, our defense minister, had made a statement in Rajya Sabha stating that yes, there is a disengagement process going on between India and China on the north and south banks of Pangong Lake that is expected to begin today, and accordingly the disengagement process has started or initiated, and we have videos and photos from that were released by armies of both sides where we can see tanks were being pulled back from positioned locations. Now the question rose whether India conceded any territory or not. To this particular question, the Indian government has said that no, we have not lost any additional or conceded any territory to China. So the question rose, in August 2020, Indian troops had taken advantageous positions on the hill on the south bank following when Chinese matched presence, leading to an eyeball situation. So the question rose, did we give up our dominant positions in the deployed areas or the contested areas? To which the government has gave a vague answer that yes and no, in the sense that we are in the talks right now and we cannot divulge any further information. As of now, the disengagement on the south bank of the lake will see Indian troops moving to their post in Chushul and Chinese troop to Maldo garrison. Both of them are pulling back to their previous locations. This is from finger 8 and not at finger 4, meaning the patrolling parties that were going till finger 8 right now and finger 4 from the Chinese, both sides have suspended patrolling duties and patrolling activities till further consensus is reached. The official said the moratorium on patrolling has been recorded in the agreement signed by the military commanders. Yesterday we did not have this information, where we were only given the information that talks were taken place and there was an consensus reached. Now we know that both the commanding sides, meaning commanders from both sides, signed a physical agreement which had the clause for the for not patrolling till further understanding is reached. So that is in regards to disengagement process in the higher altitudes of Ladakh, where there was eyeball to eyeball situation. Now the government is saying the disengagement has taken place. And to the question of whether we ceded any territory or any advantageous positions, the government is saying no, we did not cede any territory to China. Coming to the next article, climate change resilience actions in step with India. This article is particularly important because this article was written by an Australian ambassador, and his point of view in regards to climate change from the perspective of Australia and how it intends to develop relationship within in India to combat climate change as well as balancing trade is of a very unique perspective. So from his article, let us understand what the ambassador is trying to say here. Last year tested the strength of our communities and the resilience of our countries. As we all know that we had to go through the coronavirus pandemic, and it had put a lot of stress on almost all the countries in the world, and it had tested our resilience and our strength of the community and how we reacted or interacted with each other. For Australians, it is also started with the most devastating bushfires in our history, meaning not only the Australian people and the Australian government were suffering from the burnt of coronavirus, they had the highest percentage of bushfires in Australia last year, meaning thousands and thousands and thousands of hectares of dry forest was being burned to ash, and thousands of animals and lost their life. People lost their houses and their land in these bushfires. Climate change is an increasingly pressing global issue which will require our collective will to ensure a sustainable future for our countries and for the world. Whenever we talk about climate change, Australia is one of an important supply chain, raw material supply chain in Indian manufacturing process. Let us understand one thing. Australia is main. If you are talking about sustainable and renewable energy sources, lithium-ion batteries, meaning battery technology, is at the core of the entire discussion that we can take. That happens on a daily basis. You need raw materials to create lithium-ion batteries. Australia is one of the largest producers of lithium and nickel, in a sense that the raw materials you need to create lithium ion batteries are lithium and nickel, along with some other raw materials. But as far as the core materials or the important ingredients are concerned, lithium and nickel play an important role. Australia is a major supplier of both these raw materials. When India wants to develop battery technology and sustainable environmental technologies, lithium ion batteries become very important, and you need raw materials. And in future, Australia might become a huge supplier of raw materials in battery technology to India. So we need a cohesive and comprehensive plan in dealing with climate change, and both countries would benefit if they reach a mutual understanding on how to tackle these future challenges. By working together, we can reduce emissions, which will remain critical to ensuring global average temperatures stay well below 2 degrees centigrade. The entire idea and the entire goal of Paris climate agreement is to cut the temperature, or the development of temperature, or the increase of temperature well below 2 degrees centigrade by the end of this decade. In order to achieve that, the most important aspect is to work together and reduce emissions by way of developing alternating technologies. The importance of to adapt and build climate resilience technology or infrastructure is already occurring. Both the countries are negotiating, or both the countries are in the process of finalizing a project or a policy where we are trying to build climate resilience infrastructure in vulnerable areas. For example, the Virtual Climate Adaptation Summit that was hosted by Netherlands on January 25th and 26th provided a valuable opportunity to the international community for collective action to realize a more climate resilient future. The entire theme of the Climate Adaptation Summit that was held in Netherlands in the January of 2021 was how to plan infrastructure and develop our infrastructure as a climate resilient infrastructure. And Australia has, for its part, has shown strong support for Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which was a brainchild of our government India through Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where we are trying to fund projects or fund research in developing technologies that can wither and resist climate change or adverse climate events. That is called Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. This is being partly funded by Government of India. It's a Prime Ministerial initiative, and then it's an international initiative where we are trying to help small island nations in the South Pacific and Indian Ocean to create climate change resilient infrastructure and help them future floodings or future sea level rises. And Australia is also an infrastructure partner in our Solar Alliance initiative. Australia is also engaging with International Solar Alliance, where most developing nations and developed nations has come together and said that we are going to explore the solar power generation capabilities and increase our solar generation capabilities, reducing our dependence on coal or fossil fuel energy sources. Meaning we are going to move away from coal and petrol and diesel, and we are going to develop solar and wind energies. These initiatives that like Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure and International Solar Alliance are global initiatives designed to harness solar power and alternative infrastructure capabilities to provide energy needs and secure future infrastructure and livelihoods of the people. The energy dialogue will strengthen cooperation between our two countries in pumped hydro storage, cost-effective battery technologies, and hydrogen and coal gasification, adoption of clean energy technology, fly ash management technologies, and solar forecasting and scheduling. So, the Indian-Australian Joint Energy Dialogue will work for betterment of alternative energy technologies or alternative energy security needs in various sectors or aspects of energy security. That is, they will work to strengthen hydrogen storage technologies, meaning where they'll pump water to generate electricity and store that energy in batteries. And they are also going to adopt other clean energy technologies where they are going to manage fly ash that is being produced by coal burning power plants or thermal power plants. And they are also going to develop technologies that will help forecast and schedule solar energy, meaning you need to have certain effective strategies to produce solar energy. These areas both India and Australia are going to work together. Whether in responding to COVID-19 pandemic or tackling the ongoing challenge posed by climate change, we need to embrace innovation and strengthen global partnership. Here he is trying to invest or reignite the thought of globalization and multilateralism when each country is struggling with coronavirus pandemic and on a daily basis turning more nationalistic in nature, that first let us fulfill our needs, then we will talk about other countries. He is reasserting the fact that yes, we are going through a pandemic where we have to take care of our own, but also remember at the same time we have to work for globalization and multilateralism. Through that only we can achieve our goals of controlling or completely reversing the effects of climate change and building global partnerships. Practical actions that help us adapt to those changes and strengthen the resilience of our local environments are critical. We have to adopt and practice practical actions which can be used and implemented on a fast track basis. Together with India, we can make a difference. He is reasserting the fact that whenever we are talking about climate change and future global climate resilience infrastructure or renewable energy technologies, India is a core pillar of the entire discussion. Through India and with India alone, we can make a true difference. We have to work with India and develop technologies that will address the climate change issues. Coming to the next article, 93% Bihar ministers are Crorepati's. This is a report called ADR report, that stands for Association for Democratic Reforms report. This organization conducted a study of ministers of Bihar. As many as 93% of ministers in Chief Minister Nitish Kumar's cabinet are millionaires, and criminal cases are pending against 64% of them. Out of all the ministers, 93% are millionaires, meaning they are rich, they are wealthy, and adding to that, out of 100, 64 are facing criminal charges, meaning 64% of ministers who are currently in cabinet, sitting in the chief minister's cabinet, are facing criminal charges and criminal action. The cabinet has a total of 31 ministers. The ADR report analyzed self-sworn affidavits of 28 ministers and details of 2 ministers, and they found that these ministers who are currently sitting in the cabinet are wealthy beyond question here, and most of them are facing criminal charges. And coming to the other aspect of it, this doesn't actually bode well for the entire election process of India, where we are trying to clean up politics and remove corruption from the politics. But the ADR report, that is Association for Democratic Reforms, particularly in Bihar, said that Bihar kind of has the most corrupt percentage of politicians, because 93% of the ministers in a 31% cabinet are rich beyond doubt, meaning they are wealthier and Crorepati's or millionaires. Coming to the next article, COVID-19 vaccine for people over 50 years from March. So this is the next phase of our inoculation drive or vaccination drive. Till now, meaning till today, the vaccination process has been entirely targeted towards 2 sections of the society, that is healthcare workers and frontline workers, COVID warriors in a sense. Now the government has set out, and the panel, that is the director of All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences, who heads a panel where they are going to come out with the strategy for the rollout of vaccines, has come out and said that from March we are going to vaccinate people above 50 years of age. He said that the population above 50 years of age and those with comorbidities in the ages group between 20 to 50 are scheduled to start receiving COVID-19 vaccine from March. Not only above 50 years will get the vaccination, people who are having comorbidities, meaning underlying health conditions that lie between the ages of 20 to 50 years, will also be eligible to get the vaccine, and they will get their vaccines from the March. And coming to the numbers of how many healthcare workers and frontline workers have been vaccinated so far, the ministry said the ministry came out and said that total of 77 lakh people have received vaccination so far. When a question was being raised by journalists pertaining to how effective and how long this vaccine effect will last, the director of All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences said that a good amount of antibodies will develop in about 14 days after the second vaccination shot. So, in order to completely protect yourself from coronavirus vaccines, you need both the shots. You cannot receive one shot and don't take the second shot and expect it to work. You have to receive 2 shots, meaning 2 vials of coronavirus vaccine, and post 14 days of second dose of vaccine, antibodies will start to develop. Though the exact length about the protection offered is not clear, and we believe that the cover will last for at least 8 months or maybe longer. It's not like other vaccines where you get it once in lifetime and it will work for your entire lifetime. But in this case of coronavirus vaccines, we do not know how long will these vaccines work, and we expect them to work for at least 8 months. Post that, we don't know what will happen. Maybe after 8 months you have to take 2 more doses of vaccines. That we have to find out. Coming to the next article, slap sanctions on Myanmar, says UN Rights Envoy and US. So the United Nations Human Rights Investigator for Myanmar on Friday urged the UN Security Council to consider imposing punitive sanctions on arms embargo and travel bans in response to military coup. So the United Nations appointed an human rights investigator to study the coup in Myanmar. He came out with his report and said that you have to punish the Myanmar military for its actions and slap sanctions on Myanmar, and also impose embargoes on Myanmar military. The special rapporteur Thomas Andrews said that there were growing reports and photographic evidence that Myanmar security forces have used live ammunition against protesters since seizing powers almost 2 weeks ago. According to the latest data, 2 students have been killed by gunshot wounds by the military, and there is photographic and video evidence of the actions taken by the military. 2 students have lost their lives in the current protest. Now the Security Council also met on the request of Britain. The Security Council resolution dealing with similar situation have mandated sanctions, arm embargoes and travel bans, and calling for judicial action at International Criminal Court or ad hoc tribunals, he told the council. He said that when similar such situations happened with other countries, the Security Council came out with mandated sanctions and arm embargoes and travel bans on those respective countries. Now it is the duty of the United Nations Security Council to impose similar such actions on Myanmar also. That is what he told the council. The 47-member forum was meeting at the request of Britain and the European Union to consider a resolution calling for the release of Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi, and for Mr. Andrews and other UN monitors to be allowed to visit. A meeting was requested by the Britain and European Union. In that meeting, the resolution was called for requesting the military junta to release the opposition leader, that is Aung San Suu Kyi, and allow United Nations regulator to visit Myanmar and study the ground realities there. But China and Russia, which have close ties to Myanmar military, said they opposed holding the session, and said that what happened in Myanmar is essentially Myanmar's internal affairs and China is in that is according to a Chinese ambassador, and he also stated that China is in contact and communication with relevant parties in Myanmar and to promote the relaxation of the situation. To this, the Britain and United States and European Union called for complete reversal of Myanmar military actions. But it seems that not only China, Russia is also supporting the military dictatorship or military coup in Myanmar there, as they requested the session not be taken place on the behest of military of Myanmar. Coming to the next article, Dorsey Jay-Z partner to promote Bitcoin in India. So we are not concerned about what Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, is doing here. We are only concerned about how India plans to tackle the cryptocurrency conundrum. As of now, the center plans to ban private cryptocurrencies. The word important here is private cryptocurrencies. The government intends to introduce a cryptocurrency and regulation of official digital currency bill 2021 in the ongoing budget session of the parliament. This is in accordance with our ministries, where they came out and said that the government is very much intent on introducing a cryptocurrency and regulation of official digital currency bill 2021 in the ongoing budget session. To give you a little bit of history, RBI in 2018 tried to ban cryptocurrencies through an order, to which the Supreme Court said that the RBI cannot do such bans and lifted the ban imposed by the Reserve Bank of India. Now coming back to the bill, it is expected to provide some exceptions so as to aid the development of technologies underlying cryptocurrencies. Again, going back to a little bit of history, the government appointed an interministerial committee. They went around the world, they studied the cryptocurrency technology around the world. They came to India and said that we suggest you ban cryptocurrencies. We suggest that you come up with your own government regulated cryptocurrency, and we suggest that you use underlying technology, that is blockchain technology, that is being used in cryptocurrencies for other means and services. To which the bill is also trying to do the same here. The bill is trying to take the suggestions given by the interministerial committee and implement them through a legislature. But government of India is planning to come up with a crypto rupee that is to be issued by RBI. That is, a crypto rupee will be issued by the Reserve Bank of India and it will be regulated by RBI of India. Meaning, we are going to come out with a crypto rupee and it is going to be issued and regulated by Reserve Bank of India. But as of today, and the cryptocurrency and regulation of official digital currency bill 2021, it will ban private cryptocurrencies, but it will allow the use of underlying technology and the issuance of a crypto rupee that is to be regulated under the aegis of Reserve Bank of India. Coming to the next article, data boys, inflation cools to 4.06% and IIP rises to 1%. The entire gist of this article is two things. Whatever the increase or the resurgence of economic percentages that we have seen in the past 2 months have been simply attributed to the festival season and the spending incapability, meaning people were unable to spend their money due to coronavirus pandemic. Whenever the restrictions lifted, they came out in force and started spending money. So the economists who are observing the current economic growth in India came out and said that whatever the percentage of increase that we are seeing in economic recovery is not entirely true, and the factors are simply there is a large of back end, meaning there was a large festival spending. That is one factor. And the second factor is people who were unable to spend during the lockdown season are now coming out and spending that money. Now these two factors led to an increase in the economic recovery percentage. That cannot be taken as true growth rate. The economy is still fragile and it can slide back into negatives without any major push in economic recovery or economic growth. That is what I wanted to explain through here. Whatever the economic recovery that we are seeing here is not entirely true economic growth, though we are seeing a positive growth in investment and manufacturing capacities. All those things are going on, but you have to remember that the economic growth, that is V-shaped recovery that we are talking about here, is very much fragile, and there is a greater chance that we are going to slide back economically. Thank you. Have a good day.